They say angels fall because of pride, because of defiance, because they desired the throne of the Almighty. But what if I told you, one fell for love, before Dracula stalked the night, before the legends of Nosferatu echoed through terrified whispers? There was a being of light, radiant, divine, who tasted mortality not for power, but for mercy, a forbidden love, a tear shed in heaven, and from that single tear, the first vampire was born. Why would a celestial being abandon eternity for a dying woman in the snow? What kind of compassion can be so powerful it becomes a curse? And why has this story been buried beneath myth, fear, and silence? In this video, you'll uncover the untold origin of a vampire born not from darkness, but from divine sorrow. You'll discover the secret history of the Watchers, those who observed humanity, and the one who chose to interfere. You'll follow a fallen angel's descent, not into evil, but into heartbreak. And you'll learn how his bloodline still haunts the earth, misunderstood, unloved, yet never fully severed from heaven. This isn't a story of horror. It's a story of longing, of sacrifice, of a mercy so deep it shattered the laws of eternity. So stay, listen, and if your soul has ever wept for something forbidden, if you've ever loved beyond the rules, you may find yourself reflected in this tale. Comment below, can mercy ever be a sin? And if this story speaks to your spirit, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Because some stories were never meant to remain in silence. Some truths demand to be told. The Watchers and the one who broke the law. They were sent not to speak, but to see. The Watchers, celestial sentinels tasked with observing the rise and ruin of mankind, stood silently between two eternities, forbidden from touching the fragile world below. Heaven had issued a decree: you may record, but never rescue. Their eyes beheld the agony of the flood, the cries of starving children, the blood-stained soil after Cain's wrath, but their hands remained still, their lips sealed by divine law, and yet one could not remain silent. When the cries of mortals pierced the heavens, one angel, unlike the others, felt the tremble of something ancient and forbidden. Compassion, a dangerous fire. He watched a woman broken by grief and cold collapse in a blizzard, her heartbeat fading like a dying hymn. The others turned away, as they had for centuries. But he knelt. This was not rebellion for power. This was not lust for earthly pleasure. This was something far more unsettling to the heavens. Love without permission. He remembered her face, her breath, like ghostlight, vanishing into the wind. And in that moment he broke the first law, not with violence but with mercy. They called it corruption. He called it salvation. He crossed the veil. The fall wasn't thunderous. It was silent, a surrender. The moment his feet touched the earth, the stars above recoiled. And still, he did not regret it. For the first time, he understood the ache of being human, not in powerlessness, but in the overwhelming weight of caring. This is the beginning of every cursed story. When the divine chooses empathy over obedience, and it begs a haunting question: is there such a thing as too much mercy? There are those who watch and those who act, but in between lies the tragedy of the one who dared to feel. He did not fall screaming. He fell weeping, and from that fall came a birth. The woman in the snow, the price of one life. She was barely more than a shadow, draped in frost, her breath trembling like broken glass in the wind. Her child was already gone, cradled in frozen arms. No one heard her last prayer. No one, except him. He had seen her before. days before, her laughter echoing in the marketplace. Now, silence had wrapped itself around her like a grave. He approached her, not as a man, but as a flicker of warmth in a world that had turned cold. With every step, he was breaking 1,000 divine laws. The air around him shimmered with the judgment of heaven. But she never knew what he was. She only knew he saved her. He gave her breath when she had none, life when her story had ended, a single act of defiance carved from love. But heaven does not forget. It does not forgive without cost. In resurrecting her, he condemned himself. The light within him, once eternal, began to flicker. The fire of heaven, now dimmed by earthly touch, turned against him. His wings were the first to go, crumbling to ash like burnt parchment. His reflection began to shift. He hungered, not for bread, not for justice, but for blood, not out of malice, but survival. The woman lived, but the man who saved her began to die. Slowly, unevenly, becoming something never before written in heaven's books, something unspeakable. This is the paradox of mercy. To save one, you may lose yourself. His story is not about heroism, but consequence. Love gave him the strength to break the rules, but not the power to escape the judgment that followed. So many believe angels fall for pride. But what if the greater fall is for compassion? And the woman, she never saw him again, but she named her second child after the wind that saved her, Seraphus. That name would echo through time like a warning and a wonder. The child called Seraphus, born between heaven and earth. He was not like other children. He cried without sound. He slept without dreams. And when he looked up at the stars, they seemed to recoil, as if they remembered the blood in his father's vow. Seraphus was not a Nephilim, though many tried to name him so. He wasn't the product of lust or defiance. He was born from a miracle soaked in pain, a child carved from a love heaven did not approve and earth could not understand. His heartbeat was different, not rushed, not rhythmic, but calculated, like something ancient beating beneath human skin. His eyes shimmered with colors not seen since Eden. His breath sometimes chilled the room. And animals, they stayed away. He didn't bleed like other boys. He didn't age like them either. As he grew, the villagers whispered. They said he was cursed. Others said he was chosen. Some wanted to kill him. Others wanted to worship him. But Seraphus just wanted to belong. One day, a cut opened on his mother's hand, and the scent, it ignited something inside him. A need, a storm. He ran into the woods for days, weeping, begging a god he did not know to take the hunger away. But no answer came. He was not human. He was not angel. He was something in between, a bridge between worlds no one dared to cross. And this was the true tragedy. Not his hunger, not his powers, but his loneliness. The lesson lies here, not in the horror of his thirst, but in the ache of his identity. He was a soul stitched from love, yet treated as a monster. A reminder that when we don't understand someone's origin, we're quick to define them by their difference. Seraphus wasn't dangerous because he was cursed. He was dangerous because he was unloved. And yet, in every choice, he tried to protect. He tried to withhold. He tried to be good, even when the world told him he never could be. Have you ever felt like you didn't belong to any world? That your love was too much, your presence too strange, your light too misunderstood? Then, maybe, in Seraphus, you'll find a mirror. Comment below. Do you believe someone born from pain can still choose love. If his story speaks to your spirit, like this video, share it with someone who's ever felt lost between worlds, and stay with us. Because what comes next changes everything. The curse of compassion. When mercy creates a monster. There are moments in time when mercy becomes the very spark that ignites destruction. When love, in its most sacred form, births something unspeakable. Seraphus was not evil. He was not born of darkness. He was born of compassion, pure, radiant, and forbidden. Yet it was that same compassion that unraveled him from the inside out. The first time he drank blood, it wasn't from rage or madness. It was from desperation. His mother, his sanctuary, his heartbeat, lay bleeding, unconscious from a fall. He pressed his lips to her wrist, trembling, praying for it to stop. But the taste, it awakened something ancient within him, something older than sin, and once tasted, it could not be untasted. He cried as he drank, cursing the heavens that made him this way. He wanted to save her. He ended up cursing them both. That was the moment he understood. Mercy without wisdom is not a gift, it is a curse. Love without boundaries becomes poison. He had been created from an act of kindness, but in a world ruled by divine law, kindness without permission is rebellion. Many of us are taught that if our intentions are pure, the consequences will follow suit. But that's a lie born from innocence. Good hearts can still lead to devastation when they defy the design of a higher order. Seraphus learned this with every agonizing breath. His love for humanity was the very thing that made him unfit to remain among them. He wandered, hiding from the sun, from people, from himself. In his reflection, he saw both angel and abomination. And yet, the hunger never left him, because the curse wasn't the blood. It was the compassion that still lived in him, fighting against the monster he was becoming. This is the paradox of the first vampire. He was not birthed from wrath or revenge, but from mercy gone unchecked. And in his fall we find a mirror. How often do we give too much, love too recklessly, save people who never asked to be saved, and in doing so, lose pieces of ourselves we can never reclaim? The lesson is not to harden your heart, it is to guard it, to let your compassion be guided by truth, not impulse. Because even angels, when led by unbridled mercy, can become monsters. The hunger that could not be silenced. It started as a whisper, a faint ache in the chest, a dryness of the tongue. But soon, it grew into a roar. The hunger that gripped Seraphus was not of this world. It was not mere thirst. It was an echo from the void, a craving birthed in the collision between divinity and flesh. He tried to resist. He prayed, he fasted, he buried himself in the cold earth to starve it. But the hunger was not punishment, it was identity. A signature written in his blood by a choice that was not his own. And with every passing moon, his body cried louder for what his soul despised. Unlike the vampires in folklore, Dracula with his seductive wrath, Nosferatu with his shadowy menace, Seraphus did not hunger out of desire, he hungered out of necessity. His body was a battlefield, his soul was the casualty. He would find himself drawn to the sick, the dying, those already slipping through the veil, as if his curse had a mercy of its own. But even then, he wept with every bite, because every life he touched, he took, and in taking, he remembered the light he once bore. This hunger was not physical, it was spiritual. It was heaven's silence echoing inside him. He was no longer welcome there, and earth too rejected him. Cursed creatures belong nowhere. So he wandered like Cain, with a mark that could not be erased. Have you ever felt a need so deep it terrifies you? A longing you can't explain? That's what Seraphus carried. But his hunger wasn't just for blood. It was for home, for forgiveness, for wholeness. He once whispered into the wind, "Let me hunger forever if it spares one soul." But no one heard him, no angel, no man, just the silence. Sometimes the most dangerous hunger isn't for food, it's for grace. The silent angels and the judgment yet to come. One cold night, as the moon wept silver across the riverbanks, Seraphus saw them. 3 angels, cloaked in light, standing on the hill above him. They did not speak. They did not move. They simply watched. He dropped to his knees, shaking. Was this judgment? Would they strike him down as they had struck Sodom? He waited, but the fire never came. Their silence was heavier than thunder. They had been sent before, during the days of Abraham, with swords and smoke and holy vengeance. But now, they only watched. No sword, no fire, no words, just eyes that pierced through him like eternity itself. And in that moment, Seraphus understood. Sometimes, silence is more terrifying than wrath. Sometimes, the absence of judgment is a sign that your story is not yet over, that you are part of a deeper plan, hidden even from those who carry it out. He screamed at them, begging for release, for death, for an end. But they remained unmoved. Heaven had spoken once before in thunder. Now it whispered in stillness, and it was louder than any roar. What do you do when heaven watches but does not act? You wait, you endure, and you hope. Seraphus rose, not in strength, but in surrender. He realized then that perhaps he was not being punished, but preserved, not cast out, but prepared, because even cursed blood can be part of a prophecy. And if you've ever felt like the heavens were silent while you suffered, maybe you're not being abandoned. Maybe you're being written into a story that's not finished yet. Comment below. Do you believe silence from above means rejection or preparation? And if this moved your spirit, like and share this video. Someone else may be waiting in the silence too. The prophecy of the oracle. When the first blood shall drink the light, deep within the forgotten scrolls of a desert monastery, scorched by time and silence, lies a prophecy written not in ink, but in blood. It tells of a child born from forbidden love, cursed with hunger, yet destined to touch heaven's threshold with hands stained by sacrifice. From his bloodline, the oracle whispered, shall rise one who drinks the light of an unborn soul and walks into the fire without burning. The ancient scribes buried it beneath layers of metaphor and myth. But Seraphus, though he had never heard the prophecy, was living it. Every breath he took defied divine order. Every heartbeat was an act of rebellion wrapped in longing. He wasn't just a mistake of mercy. He was the seed of something more, something heaven hadn't stopped, only hidden. When he wandered into a village cloaked in plague, he met a child who radiated peace like the morning sun. The boy, untouched by illness, placed a trembling hand on Seraphus's chest and said, "You are broken, but not bad." And in that moment, something shifted. Seraphus felt the hunger quiet, not disappear but bow its head. It was as if the light in that child didn't just repel the darkness, it understood it. The oracle's prophecy spoke of this paradox, that only when cursed blood drinks the pure light of innocence will the cycle break. But what does it mean to drink the light? Is it redemption or destruction? Seraphus feared what might happen if he touched such purity. Would he consume it or be consumed by it? Would he redeem his lineage or damn it forever? Scripture teaches us that Moses killed a man, yet still led a nation, that David committed adultery, yet still carried the heart of God. So perhaps Seriphus was not the end, but the beginning of something holy, forged through the unholy. The prophecy was not a curse, it was a map, one that pointed not to his death, but to the hope still buried inside his blood. If cursed blood can carry light, then who among us is truly beyond redemption? Vampires, the misunderstood legacy of a father's love. They called them monsters, stalkers of the night, cursed ones. But what if the first vampires weren't born from darkness, but from love misunderstood? The descendants of Seriphus carried the hunger, yes, but they also carried the ache, the longing, the loneliness of a soul caught between worlds. These weren't mindless creatures. They were reflections of a father who chose compassion over command. Each one bore his mark, not just the thirst but the memory. Some tried to deny it, others tried to embrace it. But all were haunted by the same question: why were we made this way? Generation after generation, the story changed. The pain remained. They lived in shadows, not because they feared the sun, but because they feared the judgment that came with the light. Humanity hated them. Heaven ignored them, and so they hated themselves. But Seriphus left behind more than a trail of myth. He left behind a message, not carved in stone, but passed through whispers, dreams, and blood memory. You were not born evil. That single sentence, echoing through centuries, was enough to ignite rebellion in the hearts of the outcast. A rebellion not of violence, but of hope. One of his descendants, a woman named Lysara, refused to feed on the innocent. She built a refuge for her kind in the ruins of an old cathedral. She taught them to fast, to meditate, to find worth beyond their hunger. Her story never made it into legends, but it lives on in the veins of every soul she helped reclaim. The misunderstood legacy of vampires is not that they drink blood, but that they carry the unbearable weight of inherited pain. They are the children of a father who loved too deeply, fell too far, and yet never stopped believing that redemption was possible. Love that births a curse can also birth salvation, if the heart remembers where it came from. The Weeping Father, a legacy of sorrow and hope. Seriphus became a myth, a warning, a bedtime story to frighten children. But in truth, he was a father, one who watched his lineage with trembling hands and a broken heart. He did not wear a crown of thorns. He wore the silence of regret. Every new vampire born was a reminder of the day he chose love over law. And yet he did not turn away. He wandered the earth unseen, sometimes guiding his descendants in secret. A whisper here, a gentle push there, always near, but never known. He was the ghost of mercy, still weeping over the consequences of one decision. Like Adam, who watched his children inherit the curse he unleashed, Seriphus bore witness to the darkness his compassion birthed. But unlike Adam, he never blamed Eve. He never cursed heaven. He simply kept walking. He visited old churches at night, touching the altars with fingers that could no longer pray. He listened to hymns from outside the windows. He stood over battlefields, whispering peace into the ears of the dying. He was not seeking redemption. He was being it. What makes a father? Blood, protection, pain. Seriphus was not proud of what he had become, but he never stopped loving. And that, more than his hunger, more than his fall, is what defined him. In the end, every legacy carries sorrow, but only some carry hope. Will redemption ever come? The prophetic endgame. The final part of the prophecy is the most haunting. One shall rise from the cursed bloodline, bearing the hunger yet untouched by it. and walk into the throne room with blood still on his hands, but light in his heart. Redemption, it seems, was never meant for Saraphus, but for the one who would come after. A child not yet born, a soul not yet broken. The end of the curse begins not with denial, but with ownership. Throughout Scripture, redemption rarely comes clean. Paul was a murderer. Rahab was a harlot. Yet they became vessels of grace. So why not a vampire? Why not a child of mercy turned monster? Couldn't the same God who redeems murderers and thieves redeem the bloodborne? Hebrews 9:12 says, "He entered once for all into the holy places, by means of his own blood." The very symbol of death became the currency of salvation. And if blood can save, then blood, no matter how cursed, can be redeemed. Saraphus knew this. He felt it in every ache of his bones. He wasn't waiting for his own salvation. He was preparing the way for another. A new bloodline, a new story. Somewhere in the shadows, a child grows who carries both the hunger and the light. One who may one day walk into heaven, not despite the blood, but because of it. Redemption is not about being clean. It's about being chosen. Comment below. Do you believe the cursed can still be chosen? And if you do, share this story. Someone out there needs to hear that their darkness doesn't disqualify them. It may just be the very reason they're called. He walks still, through ruins, through forests bathed in silver moonlight, through cities that no longer remember his name. The world calls him myth, a whisper, a shadow caught between heartbeat and silence. But heaven remembers, and so does the blood. Because mercy does not disappear, it transforms. It carves new paths through ancient laws and writes redemption where judgment once ruled. Saraphus, the first of his kind, was never meant to be the monster of bedtime stories. He was the echo of a divine ache, the tear of heaven that refused to dry. And maybe that's the deepest truth. That love, real love, will always defy order. That compassion, when fierce enough, bends eternity. His fall was not rebellion. It was a sacrifice too messy to be called holy, a broken hallelujah, the kind that angels weep to hear. Each soul who wandered in hunger after him carried not only the curse, but the longing. A longing to be seen, to be named, to be chosen. Even the ones who lost their way in the darkness, even those who drank from the innocent, still carried a trace of that first cry. And perhaps that's what scares us most, not the monster, but the mirror. Because who among us hasn't loved too deeply? Who hasn't broken something beautiful just trying to save it? And if Saraphus, the cursed, the fallen, the forsaken, still dares to believe in redemption, then what excuse do we have to give up on our own? We live in a world that buries stories like his, that trades mystery for mockery, that calls anything it cannot explain evil, but buried in the shadows are truths too bright to look at directly. Stories like this one, dripping in blood and mercy, remind us that salvation was never meant to be clean, that grace often wears a tattered cloak, that even the night can give birth to light. And maybe that's why you're here. Maybe something in this story stirred something ancient in you. Maybe you felt that same hunger, not for blood, but for belonging, for forgiveness, for meaning beyond what the world has labeled you. You are not too far gone. No lineage is too cursed to be redeemed. No name too stained to be spoken in the language of heaven. If a fallen angel can birth hope, what might your pain give birth to? What song might your scars still sing? The bloodline of Saraphus may be fiction to some, but to others, it is gospel. A gospel not of perfection, but of pursuit. A gospel that says even monsters can remember heaven. Even the broken can carry the flame. Even the lost can become the way. So when you close your eyes tonight and the silence wraps around you, remember, you are not forgotten. You are not your failures. You are not the hunger that has haunted you. You are the choice you still get to make. And the light is still watching. If this story reached your soul, if it brought you closer to the wonder that still pulses beneath the surface of this world, I invite you to carry it forward. Let it awaken something eternal in you. Share it. Speak it. And if your heart whispers yes, then stay with us. Like this video if it stirred something ancient within you. Subscribe to walk deeper into these forgotten truths. And if you feel this story brought value to your spirit, or helped you find a flicker of light in your darker days, I humbly invite you to send a little energy my way so I can keep creating these sacred offerings. Every small act of support breathes life into the next story, and for that, I thank you with my whole heart. Comment below. Do you believe mercy can rewrite destiny? Can cursed blood carry divine light? The shadows are not the end. They are the beginning of revelation. And some stories, like yours, are still being written.